2 months, guys. Over 2 months is how long this car has been sitting for. I haven't started it once in that period of time, but I am so excited to get this started and to get working on it because uni has finally finished for the semester. So I have a few weeks during which I can commit a bit of time to this thing. I'm so keen to drive it again. But today we are not going to be starting the Gallant, unfortunately. Today we're going to be working on the Old Faithful over there. We're going to be doing something I should have done many years ago and was lucky enough to not have needed. With all that being said, let's get to it. For this, we're going to need a dash cam, a few fuse taps, and a hardwiring kit because I want the dash cam to be active while the car is parked. So this pack came with a 128GB SD card. This is really nicely packaged, and we've got the front and the rear cameras. So let's get this into the car. Okay, so the tools we're going to use, some wire strippers. These things make life so much easier. We've got some trim removal tools. Now the camera did come with a trim removal tool, which I think is really cool, but we've got our own, so either or. And we've got a multimeter, which is going to be used to test the fuses inside the fuse box so that we know which fuse to connect to. So for those of you that don't know, this is a fuse tap, and you're going to see how it works in a second, but it essentially gets rid of the need to splice into a circuit through soldering. You can just put this in place of a fuse inside your fuse box and tap into the circuit that way. So this is my fuse box, and these are the pertinent fuses. It is really dusty, but what I've got to do is I've now got to find a constant power source, an accessory power source, and then a ground. So essentially a constant power source. Fucking hell, mate. So a constant power source is basically going to be giving me 12 volts through my multimeter, regardless of whether the key is in or not. And an accessory power source will be giving me 12 volts as soon as I turn the key to accessory. So we've basically got to use the multimeter and my keys and just test for each one. I've found a few fuses in the fuse box that'll give me a constant 12 volts. So to do that, you have to stick the red wire into the load side of the terminal of the fuse and then find ground with the black, and it should give you 12 volts. Anything a bit less is okay. So this is a fuse that'll give me 12 volts even when the key is not in the car, and that's what we want for parking mode. Next up, what we've got to do is we've got to put the key into the ignition, turn it to accessory, which is all the way without starting it, and now we've got to find a different fuse that gives us 12 volts with the key turned, and that one will do. Alright, so this here is the fuse tap. What we want is to ensure that this prong here is the one that goes into the terminal that draws load. So basically, whichever side of the fuse gave you a current, the one that has load, that is the prong that this needs to go into. And we want our original fuse on the inside here and our new fuse for the dash cam on the outside, and they've both got to be the same size, or the fuse on the inside has to be larger than the fuse on the outside, and that's just how it works. So I'm just going to use two 20 amp fuses because it was a 20 amp which was originally in the fuse box location that I'm using. So let's go ahead and get this in. But before we do that, we've got to crimp this connection onto the hardwire kit. Crimped up, ready to go. So we've got two 20 amp fuses in this, and I believe the fuse is actually unnecessary because it was an empty slot according to the diagram, but I'm just fusing it up in case something else is running off it. The accessory is taken off the radio clock. So basically, whenever that clock turns on, which is often when, well, always when the key's in accessory mode, and the fuse taps are in. As you can see, there's one of them, and the other is up there. We're gonna plug the wire into the dash cam and see what it does. Of course, I forgot to ground it. So this ground needs to be attached to a bolt that connects to your chassis. So it can't be over a painted bolt. It needs to be a strip bolt that has access to bare metal. All right, I'm thinking this bolt right here will be perfect for the job. It's already clearly got a ground, and you know, using the multimeter, that's the bolt I used as my ground, so that'll do. And to access this bolt, I had to take the kick panel off. Awesome, that works. The reason it's black right now is because there is a piece of film over the camera, which I won't remove until it's properly mounted, because I don't want to get it dirty. The camera is on right now, and we're going to stop the recording. And we're going to go to the menu. We found parking mode. We hit parking mode and we will go to, we'll go to auto event detection in parking mode. Hit go, and that is that. Okay, parking mode's enabled. We'll check whether it works or not afterwards. I haven't removed the film from the camera either, so it probably won't pick up any motion. But next up is routing this cabling through the A-pillar so that we can have some nice, tidy cable management. So we've got both the front and the rear plugged in. I'm not gonna lie, routing these cables did take a while. So they go up through the headliner, and I'll fix this up soon, down the A-pillar and into the power for the main camera. And to reach the rear camera, I've routed the wires through the headliner, all the way through the back there, and down out through the rear windshield. So it wasn't like super easy, but yeah, trim's kind of annoying. And now I've got all this filth, you probably can't see, all this filth up here that needs to be cleaned. Because when you work on cars, it gets grimy, and I was doing a lot of handwork in this section. Okay, that's great. So that is both the front and the rear cameras working, which is really cool. So I took the protective covers off, and now I'm just gonna try and set them up in their appropriate locations. I've taken the car for a drive around the block, and I've looked at the footage. So there are a few things that we need to fix up to finish this installation off. The first is this rear camera. As you can see, it's mounted over here. I just used a bit of double-sided tape instead of the actual adhesive itself, because I wanted to make sure it's mounted correctly. And as you can see, I kind of missed. It's like a tiny bit off center, but it makes absolutely no difference to the footage, so that doesn't matter. But I will be removing the tape and realigning it anyway. The biggest issue though is this tint is horrific. It's on the inside, but you can see the bubbling, and obviously that's in the inside, and the lens picks up on that, and it really blurs the vision. It's better than nothing, but ideally I want to get rid of it, and I guess installing this finally gives me an excuse to get rid of this really horrible tint job that the previous owner's done. I don't know if you guys have ever noticed, but my car's always had shit tint, and that wasn't me. But the tint's got to come off, and then we can reinstall that camera properly, and that's going to be a big job, because getting tint that's well over half a decade old off is going to be no easy task. The front, as you can see, is also slightly off center, but that was done intentionally, and it's so that I can see the LEDs and some of the controls from where I sit on the driver's side, instead of it being completely obscured by the rear view mirror. And if it's too far, I can't reach over and touch any of the buttons. You know, in case I want to record something quickly, I want to be able to hit that middle button. So yeah, that was done intentionally. The footage looks great. I'll insert it in. But as far as the installation goes, it's pretty much done, aside from a couple of things I mentioned to do with the rear. The wiring's great, everything's tucked up, again with the exception of the rear, but the headline is back on, all the trim pieces are back on, everything's nice and tidy, and overall I'm pretty proud of my effort over the past couple of days. Alright guys, so a bunch of things I learnt that would be really handy for you guys too. When you're checking the fuses, make sure you have a really good ground. Otherwise, you'll think you're getting 0 volts across all the fuses, and I would never do something as silly as that. But you guys should definitely check that your ground is good when you're using your multimeter or your test light. Also, you should have a good set of trim removal tools handy. The cheap plastic eBay ones I brought weren't that good, but the Viofo came with a really handy one. And that is the hardest part of this installation, routing the wires and making sure that you don't have them dangling all over the car, because you need them in the headliners and down the A-pillar, and ultimately that's what consumed most of my time. Also, make sure your hands are clean when you're stuffing around with your headliner and your trim, because you're going to get filthy fingerprints everywhere. Other than that, it's pretty easy as long as you follow the correct way of tapping the fuse in and making sure you're not getting the incorrect orientation of the fuse. You're golden. And to be honest, after driving this car around the block for 5 minutes and reviewing the footage, the Viofo seems great so far, and I might do a proper review on that later, but I will get to that once I get rid of the rear window tint so that we have proper rear view vision. Dash cameras are definitely something that's worth investing in. It could save your ass in an insurance claim sometime. And it's just good to have footage of yourself driving. You can get weird things on cameras, and so it's pretty cool. Definitely worth investing in it. And now that I've got a set, I feel so much safer already. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I will catch you on the next one.
You say you've got them guns, but I've never seen you bang. You say you've got them drugs, but I've never seen you slang.